Alrighty, as promised, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Gravina joins us from FrontRunner Physio. Stevie and I worked together for a long time at the West Coast Eagles. I wasn't that injured, to be honest, Steve. So we didn't spend much time on the table, a little bit, and you were always the best in there. But I was happy not to see you at times. Thanks for coming into BackChat, mate.
Oh, thanks for having me, mate.
So Stevie's joining us this year on a bit of a semi-regular basis, Dan, to go through some injuries in the AFL. Now, I don't know what's going on in Western Australia, but there's not just West Coast, mate.
Yeah, okay.
Not just West Coast, but Western Australia, there's some big injuries. And I think some injuries that I've been in the system for a long time. I don't know what's going on. So perhaps you can help us break down what they are and the rehab involved, given your experience as a physio.
Yeah, and give us some good news.
Happy to share some insights, mate. And there's always a spike in injuries the first couple of rounds, as we know, year by year. But yeah, seems to be some pretty high traumatic ones this year in Perth for some reason.
So that's real, is it? Early in the season, you see the big ones?
Yeah, anytime there's a transition, so whether it's from off-season to the start of pre-season, there's a bit of a spike. From pre-season to the start of the season, there's a spike. There's always, even after buys, there tends to be injuries. So there seems to be a correlation with the jump in load or the jump in intensity and injuries popping up.
So clubs know they're coming, they're just hoping for the best sometimes.
Well, yeah, it's hard to prepare for.
Yeah.
The intensity is never high because the guys are as fit as they're going to be off a hard pre-season. Grounds are harder, and that's been a hot topic. But over a hot summer that we've had in Perth, the grounds are going to be harder. And yeah, you just can't get that match conditioning in pre-season games and pre-season trainings. It's a big jump.
Let's get into some players because there's a few to go through. I think we should start probably at the top, the captain of West Coast, Oscar Allen. What's going on? We've heard bone stress and a few words floated around. What do you see is happening and what's the likely rehab for him?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm an outsider now from the club, so I don't have the deep insights anymore. But from what I've seen, some bone stress has developed. He got through the game okay, and then it swelled up after the game. I'd imagine they had further investigations which showed up some bone stress and then some cartilage issues as well. So I think he's had surgery from my understanding. The talk is that they'll aim for an 8-week return. They'll want to scan it about 4 weeks to check out the status of the bone stress. If that's been healing up well, then he can progress his loads and get back into some training to prep for games at about 8 weeks. But if that bone stress continues, it'll probably push it out a little bit longer to that sort of 3 or 4 month return.
How common is bone stress? Like a lot of players carrying bone stress, but some it hurts more than others, or it develops into something else?
Oh, not so much. You're generally acting on a lot of the bone stress that would occur. So if someone is declared with having it, it's a pretty significant injury a lot of the time because it's a sign that the bone's just not tolerating the loads of the game and what they're putting it through. So it usually means a bit of time on the sidelines.
So when you hear hotspot, is that like, in the term hotspot gets around, is that bone stress?
Yeah, that's right. It's a bit of, I guess, a continuum from a healthy bone to a fracture, and a bone stress injury is somewhere in the middle, which is like a hotspot. It hasn't quite gone to fail, but it's starting to show signs that it's not coping.
The hotspot's like what comes up on the scan, isn't it? It like glows.
Yeah. It lights up like nice and bright and white. And there's like bone edema or bone swelling, and it's a sign that it's not happy.
Right. So obviously, Oscar played his first game. So before that, he wouldn't have known that there was bone stress, or sometimes is that how it happens usually?
Yeah, it can just creep up on you, and you can be completely pain free up until the time where it tips over the edge. And so I mean, can you prevent it? Can you jump on and scan everyone's knees and everyone's legs and pick up some of these things? Maybe. But also some of the loading that happens in bones, it can just be the part of normally playing footy. So it's hard to pick them up sometimes.
So talking about knees, let's jump between the two clubs over here in the West, chatting with Steve Gravina from FrontRunner Physio, who's now out on his own, doing his own thing. We'll chat about how you can get in touch with him and the crew a little bit later on. Oscar McDonald, not Oscar Allen, Oscar McDonald, I witnessed this one. This was like a car crash knee injury. Looked like his ankle went, his knee went. Reports coming out now that he may not have torn his ACL. He may have detached the ACL from where it attaches. Again, I don't really know what this means. What's the difference there?
Yeah, there's a couple of options of what could have happened, but with an injury like that where you have a massive hyperextension, the ACL gets put under a massive amount of stretch. Now, more commonly, the ACL will rupture and snap in the middle of the ligament, which requires the reconstruction and the 12-month injury that we all know about ACLs. Sometimes it can rip off its attachment at the bottom or the top, and it can actually pull the sort of anchor of the bone off with it. And so in that case, the surgeon will tend to go in and plug the attachment back in, and so it's sort of like bone on bone healing, and that bony healing is like a fracture. So after 6 weeks, the bone tends to be strong again, and you can progress a lot quicker rather than waiting for the ligament to get strong. Because when a ligament ruptures and you're repairing that, it takes a lot of time for the ligament to get strong through getting new blood vessels put through it and new nerve endings, and that takes that full 12 months. But a bone healing, it's a bit quicker, and so we might see him back this year.
That seems outrageous.
Yeah, so do they just glue, or like do they drill in a nail? Like, how do you attach bone? Or do you
it's a bit more than just clag. But I think that, from the surgeon's point of view, they'll probably burrow in a little bit deeper and try and fill that gap, and then use some kind of adhesive material, and then wait for the bone to heal up, and they're away.
Jeez, that would be incredible if he comes back. I thought he'd never play footy again by the looks of that. So be a good result for Freo if he does get back.
Absolutely. What about Elijah Hewett? So he's I saw something around him. He was talking to a ballerina physio or something. What's happening there?
It's been thrown around a lot.
Yeah, and also he was battling some injuries last year, and so is that sort of just a consistent thing that keeps coming up?
So, from my understanding, Elijah's had a condition called sesamoiditis. So it's an inflammation of the sesamoid bones, which are these two little bones underneath your big toe joint. It's not super common in footy, but it can happen. And generally it's just from overuse. Now, athletes that do get this quite a lot is dance and ballet, and hence the club's reached out to someone across in Melbourne. The head of Australian Ballet from a physio point of view is over there, and so she's a bit of an expert in the area. Seems like whatever management's been put in hasn't worked, or they're running out of time, so they've elected to go in for surgery. Surgery is pretty rare for it, but again, it can happen, and there's a few different options in what that can look like. It's a nasty spot though, because as little as your big toe is, it's a super important joint with your body to be able to enable you to run. So it's going to take some time, I think, for him to get back on top of it.
Is that usually a long-term thing?
Depending what's happened. I mean, it can be from removing the bone to just trying to tidy it up around it. So this one could be a couple of months, but it could be a bit longer.
And the Alter G, which was always my best friend, people who are listening or watching along, is that something that would probably be used in a rehab sense with a foot injury like that, taking away body weight?
Yeah,
and what is the Alter G?
Yeah, so the Alter G is a treadmill, which is basically anti-gravity. So you're basically in a vacuum, which can take your body weight off you. You can basically program it from you running with 100% of your body weight all the way down to 1% and anywhere in the middle. So if someone like you, mate, towards the end of your career, we'd usually put you at about 80% on a Monday morning
for no reason
to let you get through a session so you wouldn't break down. But someone with a foot injury, like below the knee, the calf, Achilles, plantar fascia, all those tissues take about 50% of the load when we run. So big forces going through the foot. So taking some weight off the foot initially to allow him to get back to running could be a viable.
It's like you're running
option.
on the moon.
A little bit like that.
Right.
A little bit like that.
Why don't we just do that? Why don't we just send him up to the moon already? So I thought you might
He's like, thanks, mate.
Who's going up there? Elon.
Yeah, Elon.
Muskie.
Yep.
Send him up there.
Yep.
Get his knee rehabbed.
That's Mars, mate.
Sorry, my bad. Could we do that? No, let's not get into that because I know you'll actually be able to answer that question. What about back on the other side, Brennan Cox, hamstring tendon injury? Again, we don't know exactly what that looks like, but it looked significant.
Yeah, it did. It was a pretty high force where he's had a big forward sort of bending moment, which basically puts the hamstring muscle and tendon unit on stretch at speed. And unfortunately, the tendon failed on him.
It happened before. I can't remember if it's the same hammy or not, but like a reoccurrence, even if it is another hammy, it's not a positive thing.
No, it's not good. And so from a surgical point of view, reattaching the tendon takes time, and tendons are notoriously slow healers. They haven't got a great blood supply, which means they take a bit longer. So it's a 3 to 4 month situation. Interestingly, the first couple of weeks are always the hold your breath moment for the medical team. The big one, whenever you get a scar incision from the surgeon up near your butt crack or the butt fold, It's a really high risk area for infection, and it's really hard to keep clean and dry. So it's going to be a uncomfortable couple of weeks for him. If you can get through that, then generally they do pretty well. But we've had a few guys over the years that end up with nasty sort of wound infections, and that leads to delays in rehab. And
is that because it's just so close to the butt?
Well, it is. You're sitting on it all the time.
Yeah.
You're laying on it.
It's always sweating. Yeah.
Exactly right.
I can see where your mind's gone.
Well, yes, that's true.
Brendan Cox's ass.
Yeah, Brendan Cox does. When you watch the footy and someone goes down with injury, can you pick it up pretty quickly, know what it looks like they've done? Because I feel like I can, but I'm guessing. I'm guessing. I'm like, oh yeah, that's an ACL. But when you watch, can you pick it?
The way the injury unfolds, like the mechanism of injury, you can predict pretty well. Not always. There's a few different areas that can come up when an injury occurs, but yeah, the longer you've watched enough footy and being in the game in the medical space, you can see a few.
Last one, Matt Flynn, massive recruit for West Coast.
Prized possession.
I mean, this cut right to your heart.
Yeah, really hurt.
I mean, Matt Flynn.
Bailey Williams meant to be a forward.
Matt Flynn has to deal with this too. Don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, poor guy. Yeah, it is rough, yeah.
Big ruck recruit. Supposedly in a captain's run doing some sort of ruck work up on a bag, which we see all the time. It happens all the time, and apparently, reportedly, has torn the hammy tendon off the front part of his knee or something. How does that even work? Your hamstring's on the back of your leg.
Yeah, it is. You've got two hamstrings on the inside of the thigh, which come around and just wrap around just to the front little corner of your knee.
Right.
So for whatever reason, I haven't seen it before in a traumatic injury like this.
I've heard that before. I've heard that, but haven't seen it before.
No, it's pretty rare to happen like this, and I'm imagining he's not going super hard at the bag either.
No.
So typically, there might have been something underlying there where it might have just been grumbling away, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So it's pretty rare in footy to have that one, and I'd imagine the club will reach out to a few other experts around to get some advice. You
know how you're talking about the ACL rupture compared to it with Oscar McDonald?
Yeah.
Would this be sort of similar? Like compare a Brendan Cox middle of the body tear compared to off the bone?
I mean, different as in with the rehab, you're spending a lot more time around the knee for Matt Flynn's area versus the hip. I'd imagine if you're comparing the two, Brendan's would take a little bit longer just because it's a higher area and happen at just such a high speed, which means it's going to take longer to build up the tolerance to that kind of level of force again. But yeah, this one's a little bit unique, so it might be interesting to follow over the next couple of months to see how Matt returns.
Like you mentioned at the top, talk around hard surfaces of preseason and stuff like that, and there's also a lot of talk around Mineral Resources Park being a contributor. Is that a factor? Hard grounds causing injury? Is it just the body isn't used to it yet, or do they need to change grounds? Or
hard
Eagles, but yeah,
hard grounds are a known risk factor for injury, and the industry knows that, and so there's regular testing that goes on around ground firmness. There's also a lot of testing going around the traction coefficient, so how well the ground gives to allow the guys to be able to change direction at speed. And so, the club, from what I understand, the club will be testing it regularly, and if it was deemed unsafe, they wouldn't be training there. But I think it's something they're taking into consideration.
So that is Steve Gravina, FrontRunner Physio. Stevie, you got locations in Osborne Park, Wembley, West
Perth, yeah.
If people are listening along, how can they get in touch? You've got a few vacancies, maybe, or maybe you don't. Maybe you probably don't.
Yeah,
tend to be pretty busy, but good. No, we've got a really good team of physios around us. Great. So we're growing, and it's really good fun getting back into the private practice industry to serve the community and young and inspiring athletes as well.
How do they get in touch?
They can get in touch via the website, frontrunnersports.com.au, and on Instagram, frontrunnersports. Plenty of info right there.
I imagine even if you're just a real footy nuffy and you want to talk about injuries, you could just book in a session and just chat.
Yeah, happy to chat.
This is really interesting.
So
stuff,
good. Right? I love it.
Like
talk forever.
I think at some point, clubs are really. It's really difficult for clubs to give really detailed descriptions on what happens to players all the time because there's so much going on, isn't there? You've been inside a footy club. There's a lot happening every week, isn't there?
Absolutely.
There'd be stuff happening that we wouldn't know about that you're managing week to week.
Yeah, once the season starts, you go into a bit of damage control and just trying to help patch up guys to get through from week to week. And it's hard to be able to step away and take the long-term view for a lot of these guys, because the pressure of winning each week is just huge. So it's a challenge for the medical team. And I certainly feel for all the clubs that are feeling the pain at the moment of these early season injuries.
This has been great. We're going to get you back in for sure. Steve Gravina, FrontRunner Physio. Make sure you get in touch. Thanks for coming in and joining us, mate.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.